Tena koto, tena koto, tena koto katoa. I whanau mai I Tiapani, I tipu ake o I te hononga o Amerika. E noho ana o I te upoko o te ika a Maui. Ko Diane ho. No reira, tena koto, tena tato katoa. I'm Diane Henjyoji, and I'm here to talk to you about the research that I did on the use of social media in New Zealand public libraries, particularly around the way in which it's being used or not being used for building relationships with the library users. So one of the things that I did is I had to determine which Web 2.0 tools I'd be looking at in terms of which ones were actually around social, creating a social relationship with the library users. So I looked particularly at Facebook, blogs, and Twitter. And I didn't look at things like RSS feeds because they are aggregators rather than tools that are used for digital dialogue. I looked at using the tool of social media optimization, which was a set of rules that came out of Rohit Bhargava's work. And he was using, basing it on search engine optimization rules. And he came up with the first 5 rules. And then Ouyang, Baker, who's the one at the bottom, and Olthus added on to that in a very typically social media collaborative kind of method. They kind of added on to them. And in 2010, Bhargava put out these as sort of the kind of definitive social media optimization rules. And I wanted to see whether or not these would be useful for for libraries, public libraries in Aotearoa to be using to be strategic about their use of social media and whether or not they were being strategic about it. I didn't think that some of these rules applied to public libraries. So I, like, for example, encouraged the mashup. Not many libraries are at the time, were using the mashup to engage with their users. So I kind of condensed them down to fewer rules, plus it made it easier for me to do my research. And a lot of these are things that Meredith actually picked up earlier about knowing your target audience, and about actually doing that collaboration, actually being out there and communicating with your users in this way. And also that thing about being real and authentic. I think that this is the thing about having a picture, having that personalization of the blog, of the tweets, of your blog posts is quite effective, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So I had particular questions because, of course, doing research, you have to have your research questions. And I wanted to kind of see if I could tell without actually going into social media policy what purposes the libraries had for their use of social media. Okay, so then I had to kind of whittle down because I can't look at all of the public libraries in New Zealand. I didn't have time for this. And so I looked at the ones in urban centers, mostly because I was looking to find libraries that had the possibility of using social media with their users. I didn't want to be looking at libraries that A, weren't active on social media, B, were using it because they really needed to engage with these people that maybe might or might not have it. I wanted a definitive group that had social media active and were actually using it to engage with their users. So I picked urban public libraries. And obviously, again, I can't look at all 16 of them. So I looked at 4. I tried to balance it out with 2 in the North Island and 2 in the South Island. I picked a bigger one and a smaller one, or libraries serving a bigger population and a smaller population, and libraries that had been using them for a while and had and ones that were newer to it. I only looked at data for April 2011, so some of the things that I'm going to say are a little bit out of date, and I know that, and I'll try and bring in the things that I found out more recently. And I looked at all of those things, and I picked up loads and loads of endless hours of counting tweets. You know, it's unbelievable. And finding out that Twitalizer, you needed to sign up a lot earlier than I did to actually use it for that time period. So the social media, the libraries, I wanted to know which libraries were using, which of these libraries are using which social media. So I looked at Palmerston North, yeah, that's you guys, Palmerston North City Library, and This on the left is it was their Facebook page at the time that I was looking at it. And you can see that it's got this heart, it's got a really warm and welcoming kind of image to it. And the like button's right there, bang. And really surprisingly, Palmerston North City Library was was the library that had the most likes for their Facebook page compared to the population they were serving. At the time, there was about 75,000, I think, in Palmerston North. And it was an incredible number of likes on their page. Now, because Facebook's taken over, it's gone to, everybody's got the timeline look. So this is what they look like now. This is the Palmerston North City Library's Twitter feed at the time, and but the interesting thing is the ones at the bottom are other people that I found on Twitter by putting in the search terms of Palmerston North City Library, PNCL, all of the different combinations. And these 5 people self-identified as being linked to Palmerston North City Library, either in their profile or in their actual username. So I included them in a sort of separate category. And their interactions with the users were really interesting because not only was Palmerston North City Library communicating with their users quite in a very personal manner, these people also were presenting a really personal face to their users. And I think that is critical in the large number of followers that Palmerston North City Library had at the time, compared to other ones. Now, just, sort of this week, this is what it looks like. So there's only these 3 people. When I went back to find these other people, these other Twitter users, they no longer existed. And this has to do with the fact that as I finished writing up my research, Palmerston North City Library changed the way in which they had their blog, which is the bottom bit, and also the way in which their website looked, and the way in which they approached Twitter. And it's all become more unified. And interestingly as well, the growth in the number of people that are liking or following them has actually kind of plateaued a bit. And I think that that's significant in this term of like streamlining it. That's fantastic, that's great, everything looks really unified. But at the same time, maybe it's not targeting the segments of their target audience that they could be. Wellington City Library is also very active on their social media. So on the left-hand side, that was what their Facebook page looked like at the time. And on the right, obviously, this is their new one because of the timeline. Now, one of the problems that they had there in terms of getting likes, and they had a few hundred, I don't even think that they had 1,000. They had a couple hundred, I think, likes on this. So for a population of Wellington side, and they'd been having this Facebook page go for a long time, they had a couple hundred of likes. And Palmerston North City Library, who's serving like 75,000, they had 1,000, nearly 2,000. Okay, so that's a significant difference. One of the problems with, I thought, with Wellington City Library's Facebook page is it directed them right away to search. And it looks almost exactly like their web page. It looks the same. This is still their web page, but now their Facebook page invites people in to converse with the library. Okay? Here, their Twitter feed hasn't changed much. But their blogs have. Their blogs now look like this. At the time, they looked very disjointed, and they didn't all have the same connection to Wellington City Libraries, which they do with the colors and the layouts of them now are more unified. And one of the things that they had done that was interesting in the way that it affected the digital dialogue was that they had turned off comments on some of their blogs. So there was no way that a user could actually comment on what they were saying. Christchurch, they were one of the later adopters. I think they were the latest adopter of social media, and they'd done it in a very, very organized manner. They had heaps of conversation. They were generating lots of conversation. They just around this time, that was when the Sally Peferangi from Finding Heroes put out her report around the Christchurch had this huge amount of noise, this huge amount of posts that were going out there, and that they were incredibly vibrant and lively use of social media. They also had their Twitter feed, and you can see here that uniquely in their Twitter feed, they actually have the faces of the people that are tweeting on there, but they don't actually show, but when they actually post with the Christchurch logo. So it kind of loses that personal touch. And their website and their news blog, their general news blog. I'm going to talk about the kids blog in a minute. And Dunedin Public Libraries, they also, because they had launched with this idea, Paul Hayton had launched with this idea, and some of you might have heard his talk before at the previous, LIANZA 2010, I think it was, about their branding policy and how they'd gone through and made all of their social media very unified. So you can see that even before and after, they still look really similar. Their Twitter feed also looks really similar, and their website and their blog are all unified. Now, interestingly, I thought their blog was active when I chose them. And what I found out with Palmerston North City Libraries and Dunedin Public Libraries was in the course of the month that I wanted to look at, Palmerston North City Library had only one post. That was because they were in the process of making a new blog. And Dunedin Public Libraries posted this just as I was writing up to say that they were not posting on their blog so that they could focus on other social media. So that data just went out the window. So one of the things that Meredith talked about earlier was about knowing your target audience. Who are your users that are using social media to actually communicate with the libraries? And in April 2011, I was actually able to find a lot of information out about these people without even being in the library organization. So I didn't have that connection of being friends with these people. I actually could see or have them be followers or anything like that. I could actually see a whole bunch of information. So with Facebook, generally speaking, the user that is using Facebook to communicate with their public library is female more often than male. She is more likely to click like than she is to comment. The males, on the other hand, are more likely to comment than click like. Interesting. They are younger in the more northern libraries and get older as you go down the country. They are likely to be involved in libraries and archives. Interestingly, Palmerston North City Library was an exception to this. More of their Facebook users were likely to be ICT-related, employed in ICT-related fields, and they were also less likely to be self-identifying themselves as self-employed or entrepreneurs. And in Dunedin, they tended to be a little bit older, but that was across all of their social media. And for Twitter, they generally tended to be male. The Twitter user that's communicating with the library, it tends to be male, under 45 years old, so a younger population than a lot of other ones. Highly educated and willing to communicate this to the world. It's because of the Twitter users and what they're using Twitter for. Most Twitter users are oftentimes, as you can see, entrepreneurs or self-employed. Twitter and all the other social media are essentially their electronic CV. So they put out who they are. You can find them on. They have a LinkedIn link. They have a blog link in their profile. You can find out heaps of information. And then when you don't have that, there are the standard search engines. Which is how I got most of this information. You can also, they also tend to be in technology, which again goes along with the whole idea of using Twitter to be your electronic CV. Dunedin totally reverses this trend. They're more female than male, a slightly older age range, and tended to be in publishing. And this has to do with the way in which Dunedin goes out and was actually communicating quite deliberately with authors, so that authors were then tweeting on their Twitter feed. And so that, I think, is a very deliberate move. The other thing about the Facebook users is that in Christchurch, that was the only area where people self-identified as retired or full-time parents. I don't know why. Okay, blog users, female. Okay, so there's a little bit of a gap of information here, and this has to do with the way in which, the mechanism by which you can post on blogs, which has to do with you can be anonymous, you can create your own username right on the spot. It doesn't take any personal information. So the best that I could guess is that by the kinds of things they were posting, replying to, and the people that did actually leave their names, they were more female than male. Now, this actually is a really small set of data compared to all the other ones. For Twitter, I almost had 100%, I could identify who they were. For blogs, it was well under 50%, and for sometimes about a third of the people that have posted comments on their blog. So it's actually almost insignificant, and it raised the question for me to say, well, is there a way of making the blog comments have something that takes some information from your users so that you actually can know who you're talking to with the blogs. With Christchurch City Libraries, they, what you could find out is actually a significant number of the posts were from librarians to librarians, or from librarians' families to the librarians. And I found one really interesting set of a conversation. It was a conversation. A woman was posting on her blog, and a friend and a family member who was far, far away, halfway around the world, commented on the blog saying, hey, this is great that you're blogging, and that kind of thing. So that is a really typical kind of exchange that you got on this Christchurch City Library blog. The other thing that was interesting is the flow of the information. So Christchurch City Library and Wellington City Library both use Hootsuite or TweetDeck to move things from their blog to Facebook and to Twitter. So the same posts generally show up in all three places, which to me wasn't really targeting their users very well, because as you can see, they're very different people. The one time that Christchurch City Libraries didn't post through Hootsuite in the time frame that I was looking at, they had, I don't know if you can see this very well, but they posted something. About a day later, somebody else posted in reply. Lots of people were liking it. And a half an hour later, Christchurch City Libraries actually replied to it. And that was liked as well. And so there was actually the beginnings of a conversation starting to happen. But because the Hootsuite and TweetDeck, I can only assume that the comments that go on Facebook in reply to your cross-posted information don't go back. There were sometimes weeks, days, hours delay between when they actually posted something and when they got a reply. This was very different to, say, Palmerston North City Library, where you had lots of exchanges where people would post something, it would be liked, it would be commented on within days, minutes sometimes. And also that suggestions on there were implemented really quickly. Like somebody said something about the non-smoking area should be expanded and moved away from the door, and they said, yep, we're on that, we know about that, and we're doing that now. So in terms of efficacy, having somebody looking at that information is, I think, really important to having dialogue with your users. Christchurch City Libraries blog, this lurid green is really attractive to kids, and what they've done, which is really interesting, is they've obviously gone out and done community outreach. They've obviously gone into the schools and taught the teachers and the kids how to post on their blogs. Now, I don't know this from actually asking Christchurch City Library blog. I actually know this from watching what they've done. On the left, you can see this is a really typical post. It's from the author of the month. They blog on there, they post on there, they talk to the kids ask them questions, they reply, which is, for a kid, blogging to a library and going, hey, what about this? I really like this character. Are you gonna write more about them? And have the author say, yeah, I'm gonna write about this person. I really love that character too. I'm so glad you like them. How rewarding is that for a kid? And the other thing that they do is they get the kids to post reviews. So Amy, who's 10, the information's out on the blog, is posting this review of a book. And somebody else who goes by another name posts back saying, yeah, I saw a show about this. It's about the gorilla. But I don't know if you can see it, but Ivan, the gorilla. They say, oh yeah, I saw a show about that. And then the next person, which is also a kid, says, oh, I heard that Ivan died and blah, 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 but I put a picture of him on my blog. Now, Zach, who works for Christchurch City Library's kids blog, replies to that kid and says, yeah, wow, he was really cute when he was little. So he's obviously gone to the blog, looked at the picture, and is saying something back to the kid. And this is a really good example of dialogue, I think, on a blog. But you kind of have to have somebody that's willing to engage in that thing. It's back to that time thing. But it's really important, I think the kids here, from the activity that I see and continue to see, a year and a half later, because I pulled this up this week, the consistent habit of communicating with their library through their blog is being grown here now, and I think will continue as adults. And I don't know what's going to happen when they get to posting on the blog, or posting through Facebook, or posting through Twitter to their library, and they get no response. It's a question. It's a question. Sorry. Over? Okay. The purposes were mostly, as the ALA report showed, or that came out earlier, showed mostly for promoting their activities and events that are happening and collections that they have. Wellington City Libraries, which is the one in the middle on the bottom, they actually post about things that they think would be of interest to their users. And I think that libraries could really do this in a more focused manner if they looked at their actual users and actually did some work around the metrics of this. The social media, the conclusions were that, yes, find out about your target audience. Spend some time, give somebody some time to actually run these social media. Use it for conversation, not just for promoting your things. Use it for promotion, sure, but also create conversation. Put stuff out there that is directly attracting your specific target audience for that specific social media. They're not all the same. Metrics are available. This is metrics from a page that I created for a conference earlier this year. And you can see the graph at the bottom, you can see that there's a post there that created a whole bunch of activity and lots of people sharing it, replying to it, reading it, going, oh, hey, look at this. You can see exactly what effect, what actions have what effects, because as the page owners, you get this information. You can also, there are tools for Twitter, there are tools for blogs, and you should be using all of those really effectively to get this information. And I would say that overall, yes, New Zealand public libraries are still at the beginning of using this. Use it strategically. I think it's really important to use it strategically. Focus on creating digital dialogue to create a relationship with your users, not just as a big billboard to say, hey, we're doing this cool stuff. I mean, use it for that too, but use it to make dialogue, converse with them as people, being personal, and also to review that thing about assessment that Meredith was talking about. Review what you're doing. Make a strategic policy, review what you're doing, and then change what you're doing. And that's it. Did I fit the time?
No, well done. We'll get questions as well. Thank you, Diane. I'm really keen to know, this is part of some research you've done. Is this research accessible anywhere?
It's in the digital, it's in the digital repository at Victoria University, because I did this work for my Info 580 research, which is why it's more narrow. I mean, there were a lot of things that I could have looked at, but it's really narrow in scope because I had to do it for a master's and I had to finish it within a specific time.
Okay, we've got time for questions. Excuse
me. Thanks very much. It was really interesting. Diane, in 2011, April, I don't think Facebook had promoted posts yet, where you could actually pay for that sort of thing. So I'm just interested to know if, as you've gone further along, and now we're in 2012, are any libraries looking at using those promoted posts and assigning budget officially to their social presence?
I don't actually know if that's going on. I'm assuming that some libraries would be. I'm not sure if libraries in New Zealand are doing that. And they've only started rather recently. It would be interesting to see in this next year to see how effective that is and which libraries are doing it and how successfully they are doing it. But the scope of my research was there, and then it finished at the end of 2011. And it's not, I haven't actually continued the research into this year, but you're right, that would be a really interesting thing to look at. And that's exactly the kind of thing that I kept coming up against, going, ooh, that would also be really interesting. No, back to the drawing board.
Thank you.